Well, I'd like to start the day by extending my previous talk on unity and duality and take that concept and apply it to other areas and then to get heavily into science and show how it applies there too. So I hope that sounds interesting to you because I am going to proceed. And I have notes. Yes, I do. So, yeah, the term unity and discontinuity, that concept of a I can't say it, being polar, having two ends, with a line in between. That can be broken into segments and measured and quantified. So, in that regard, and I think the public is now very familiar with this, not only the term, but the concept, and that is analog and discrete. In fact, I would venture to say a decade or two ago, if you ask a person, what's the opposite to discrete or what's the opposite to analog, it would be hard to define that concept. But also, more generally, and this one I like because this one's going to dwell on the illusory nature of when you go into duality and think that you can, separate and conquer and understand. Well, you can to an extent. But getting back to my notes. We humans pride ourselves on our objectivity. And in the realm of science, I think it's quite admirable. But in the terms of the numbers of people on Earth, I don't think so. So I want to give an example of how I think so many people can be in denial of the reality of the short-term nature of their existence based on continual growth. And that is going back to the 50s. I have very fond memories in the early 50s of our family going camping to Kings Canyon. Actually, a friend had a cabin. We spent I believe it was a full week there. Fanciest thing they had was a water pump. In fact, we have this on home movies, which has been transferred to videotape, and I believe I was probably about 6 at the time. In fact, on our trip to Alaska, my sister took a picture of me pumping water to relate to that time when I was 6 pumping water. But back to the point. Also, we went, of course, to Sequoia, and I remember very well we took a horseback trip between General Grant and General Sherman, and I remember that big tree cross-sectioned that had points in time where it went back before Jesus, and it was quite impressive. Yes, it was. I believe it was before Jesus. It was a long time ago. I believe they're a couple thousand years old. I know the burley cone pine. I believe it's going to get up to 4,000 years old. A tree fell across the street, and it was 80 years old. And that was something in today's world. But anyway, getting back to my point, so a little later on, when we're more like 8 and 10, and my sister started to hang out with her girlfriends, and I started to hang out with my boyfriends, my father having fond memories of scouting and camping out, and they also had a cabin in the family, Rush Lake, where they would go and not only spend the weekends. Actually, my father's brother spent the summer there one time, just hunting and fishing. I don't know what he did, but anyway. So my father, at least 2 occasions, quite possibly 3, he rented what was called a teardrop trailer. It was a small, low trailer, so there was not much wind resistance because it was shaped like a teardrop, and there were and it was lower than you, so you had a half door that you would crawl in. It was basically just a bed in there where 3 people could sleep. And on the back, it opened like a trunk, and that was cooking. So it was very practical. And we took, as I say, at least 2 trips there. And he let me invite my best friend, Spike Talley, who was exactly my age, and we were very well matched. We spent a lot of time together, although he didn't live close. His parents were friends with my parents. But getting back to the point, we, as a family, had earlier, and we also had this on home movies, taken a day trip to Morro Rock. And that was a big granite outcropping. Of course, I didn't know this at the time. That was on the side of a valley, and there was a lot of exposed granite, but you had a large view, and it was climbing on rock face. And it was, I mean, it wasn't unsafe. It was made safe by rails and everything, but you wouldn't want to get on the other side of the rail. And we had gone there, I believe, at least 2 times. This is a very early memory. So, but we had been there before. But anyway, so Spike, my dad, and I were camping. I think it was probably in Yosemite this time, because I remember us in Yosemite. We would take inner tubes down the Merced River, and it was cold, but it was quite exciting. So it was like that place. But anyway, when we got there, I don't believe Spike had ever been there before, but my father and I had. And my father had this spontaneous thought that when we were going to Morro Rock, that there was a trail, and it was called Echo Point, and it was like a 3.5-mile walk, I think round trip. So we decided, instead of going to Morro Rock again for us, we would go to Echo Point. So I don't remember the walk very much. It was certainly nice, but I remember Echo Point because that was made quite an impression on me. It was a ridge that was opposed to Morro Rock, but it was quite a distance, and it was quite a big rock face. Nothing like El Capitan, but certainly significant. And that's why it was called Echo Point, because it got very good echoes from there. And you could see parts of where the trail was on the rock for people, because you could see the handrails. And I believe you could see people too, but it was, as I say, quite a distance. Well, so anyway, Spike and I, we were testing out the echoes, and really it was so far that you could count almost up to 6, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 1 would start coming back. So you could stay a significant amount before it would return to you, like a whole sentence. So anyway, the reason for this whole story is that, Spike was convinced that somebody on that rock was playing games with us, because this echo was so perfect. That they were just mimicking back everything that we were yelling. So we conducted a number of tests to see if we could fool this person. Of course, I never believed it was a person. But the point of the story is that every test we did, Spike would become more convinced that this is a person, and not an echo. And I was more convinced it was. I'd never really heard an echo that clear and distinct before, so I was quite impressed too. And at first thought, you might think that true. But the testing made me feel more so that it was, a true echo. So what we started doing is saying commonly known terms, but screwing up the pronunciation somewhere. And so the final theme of this story was that we figured out, well, the biggest word we knew was anti-disestablishmentarianism. So Spike yells out, anti-disestablishmentarianism! And it comes back perfect that way, mispronounced. But I can remember so clearly looking right into Spike's eyes and saying, aha! And we were both that way. So, there was no objective, proving or disproving without more scientific information, whether this was true or not. But it certainly went down in my memory as a story there. Let me get back to my notes so I don't get off track. Yeah, so, we can draw that analogy to, I think, people's positions, especially politically, and especially about the environment, and the reality of what's happening. And as I've said many times before, you get so accustomed to all this bad news, and life seems to go on that you can pretty much ignore it. I think pretty much like the people on Easter Island did, when they cut down that last tree. Okay, and the rats took over. But I don't want to dwell on the earth. I don't have much more to say on that topic. It's really pretty fundamental. But to get on with my story, maybe the next example that I'd like to give, and this is of human nature, but specifically I would say this describes politicians or people that want elective power from the masses. That there's no beating around it. An environmentalist isn't going to do it out there. You have to pander to the people's self-interest. I mean, when Obama goes to wherever, he talks about the industry that's applicable to that area and the interest of those specific people. But yeah, I've always liked these psychology tests. I almost majored in psychology because I was interested. I had general psychology and abnormal psychology, and at that point I decided that I wouldn't, because you would have to at least get a master's degree. But I found the experiments that they did interesting, so I want to describe one now, and that was where they take the sucker, the volunteer that thinks he's doing one thing, being tested on one thing, and is being tested on another. And then they have all the people that really know what's going on around him. And I'm sure you've heard about the one where the guy's, sending electric shocks to the guy that's giving wrong answers. And the guy's starting to yell, and one's out. And the guy in charge says, no, keep on turning that switch. But this experiment, so they take this dunce, and they put him in a room with, let's say, 6 other people who know what's going on. And then they have the guy in charge come in with the white coat. And they they conduct a bunch of simple tests. But you don't write down your answers. You just raise your hand, So it's a quick thing. And it gets on to these kind of simple optical illusions, where they have 2 lines, and one looks like an arrow this way, and one looks an arrow this way, and one looks longer than the other. So they let a couple of those go by, and they all agree on what would be the obvious answer. But then all of a sudden, on one where the answer is also obvious, everybody answers incorrectly. They choose the wrong one. And so the dunce here is just, he looks at it again, and usually the first time, he'll choose what he believes, what everybody else didn't choose. But very quickly, and they keep on doing this now, every time. So very quickly, the majority of the people tested would yield, let's say within one or two, maybe even on the first one, to the group's conclusion. So when they would raise his hand, he was like going along, like the people in Germany, hey, I'm just going with the flow here. So anyway, the point of that whole example is that you could really, and some people stood up on their own. They didn't yield, and they interviewed the people afterwards, and what they concluded, it's the mindset of the person, and they put them into one of two mindsets. Let me take a little drink here. The pause that refreshes. I can do a nice commercial right here now. Why, that was good. Yeah. So the mindset was either task orientated or group orientated. That is, if the person, was more concerned about the social interactions, and getting along with the group, they would yield. So they were socially orientated, and people at task orientated, focused in on the work and sort of ignored the sometimes artificial interactions that take place that impede progress, sort of the scientific type. So anyway, my point there is it's easy to be blinded by the truth, especially when you get accustomed to it, and especially when big money, big interests has essentially put your brain into a vat, my favorite old concept. Not literally, but to a level, by giving you, have it your way, a Burger King and all these, beautiful stuff. You don't see how, the jungles of South America are getting decimated and burnt down, and then, fodder for cows that can get slaughtered for hamburger. Keep it cheap for the masses. Soylent Green, excuse me. We're getting there. So, on with it. I think I made my point on that topic. It's easy to be deceived. And the next topic is and this is going now off into the deep end, or falling off the cliff. So you science folks that are interested in science, put on your science beanie caps, spin your little twirly up there, and let's go. So what we want to talk about next, and let me think for a minute how this is. How this is this is related back to the most fundamental topic that I'm discussing, which is unity or duality. But I'm going to now use the term continuity or discontinuity, because that's I think the best description here. So, and I believe this example is attributed to Zeno. It's not one of his paradoxes. I have one of his paradoxes next, his arrow paradox. But this is, and I'm not sure it was Zeno, but it was a Greek, because it was early thinking. I read it in a book, and it was very meaningful to me. And this is an example where when you hear the results, it's, I won't say easy, but it can be interpreted either one way or another. So it's sort of based on your preconceived notion of time, what this all means. And I even have a visual aid on this, so I've prepared. I'll know my song well before I start singing. So Zeno, of course, he had these famous three paradoxes of time: the tortoise and the hare and the arrow. And I think you can never leave the room. That's the same as the tortoise and the hare. But anyway, he really started to think about time. And is it discrete? That is there a smallest unit of time, which we can call a moment? Or is there not? Is it always just, you know, a continuous flow? So continuity, is it continuous? Or is it discontinuous? Does it have little discrete moments that are up back to back, like points, you know, on the number line? So he did what we would call today, and what Einstein coined as the thought experiment. He thought about, and here's where the visual aid comes in. He thought about time as, use this one, as and think about time as frames on a movie here. So this is a movie film. Here's frame 1. Here's frame 2. Here's frame 3. So the thinking here is, in this frame, nothing moves, because time doesn't pass. This is just a point in time, a moment in time, okay? Then the next moment in time adjoining it is, of course, right here, 2. But no time passes between going from 1 to 2. So what you have really is like, this is the now, okay? So this is now, at this point in time. And then this is the next now, okay? And so on and so on. So that would mean that time were discrete, that you couldn't... And, oh, this is a good thing too here. Yeah, I had thought of it before, but I didn't write it down. So let me bring this up here. In quantum physics, there's this thing which is, and the term is commonly known, a quantum leap. And what that means, without going into a great deal of depth, an atom with its electrons spinning around it, each electron spins in a specific shell or cloud, and it doesn't leave that territory. And in what they call the ground state of the atom, at minimum energy, all the electrons are as close in the inner shells as they can possibly be. But when a photon of electromagnetic energy strikes the atom, and it's absorbed by the atom, it disappears. But what it does, you know, the conservation of energy, it gives that electron energy to jump from one shell or one cloud to what's a higher cloud, further away. In fact, if enough energy is applied, that's when you get, you know, all of the electrons go away, and you get then these naked nucleuses. But anyway, my point there is that the electron, when it goes from one shell to the next shell, no time elapses between it going from shell 1 to shell 2. So that is very bothersome. Yeah, that is very bothersome. It's a very short period of time, but it's very bothersome. But getting back to my example here. So continuing with this thought experiment. And I'm sort of giving away some of my content from my flagship talk on What's the Point. So this I guess I can't cover. Well, I'll probably cover it. Probably won't cover it as detailed. You'll have it elsewhere. So this is to interest you in that. So what Zeno or whoever the Greek was that thought about, he had this thought experiment. I'm going to turn here so you can see it right. That where let's take we're at one moment at a time, and what we're going to do, we're going to make one go one way and one go the other way. Okay. So the concept here is that one moment in time, we're going to have 1 and A are going to be here. Okay. But as 1 goes down, let's see. 1 goes down. One goes down. But also, A goes up at the same time. Okay. So in 1 unit of time, that is when time goes from 1 to 2, the position this goes down 1, and the position of this goes up 2. So one moment, 1 is going to be next to A, and the next moment, 1 is going to be next to C. Okay, that's what's important. Now, the person concluded with that time must be continuous, that you can never have a moment in time without time passing. Because if that were true, then there would have never been a time where 1 was next to B. So at one moment in time, 1 is next to A. The next moment in time, 1 is next to C. And there was never a time where 1 was next to B. So, and that's sort of the situation too with the quantum leap. So that's the situation where you could sort of look at that 2 ways. And I won't tell you which way to look at it, but it would look to me like time is continuous. You know, that does seem bothersome, that something to transit from one position to another position doesn't in fact go through all the intervening infinite points. Yeah, and that is bothersome. But it's also bothersome that quantum leaps occur, that electrons disappear in one spot and show up on another. You know, and there's a lot of quantum, entanglement kind of stuff and relativity that, are extremely bothersome. But I don't want to go that way. I want to extend this thinking about time and even go a little deeper. And this is giving away quite a bit of my content from What's the Point. But I found it very interesting, and I think I'm ready to describe it now. And I wanted to start talking about durations of time, because these get so extremely small that it's like trying to relate to $1 billion, or a billion isn't so much anymore. Maybe it's a trillion or quadrillion. Where's the sextillion after that? And, I thought when I heard gig, I thought, oh wow. Now when I hear tera, oh my Christ, terabytes of information stored. Jeez, and getting denser and denser. Moore's law. It's got to stop somewhere. But getting back to the point, so now I wanted to take one of Zeno's. Excuse me. I wanted to get on to Max Planck first. He's basically the guy that sort of uncovered this quantum nature of reality at very small levels. And although I have a hard time understanding it, it's apparently from his research that he did on black body radiation, which we won't go into, and deriving equations from what I understand to be the frequency of electromagnetic wave and its energy level. He came up with these Planck units. So there's like Planck time and Planck length and Planck this and Planck that. But in terms of Planck time, it's 10 to the minus 47, I believe, or thereabouts, which in English terms means you have a decimal point. Remember Victor Borga? Can't make that pop. And then you have 47 zeros to the right, and then you have some number. And I understand a Planck unit of time is the time that it takes light to travel the diameter of a proton. Now, that's extremely small. And apparently at Planck time, apparently time isn't so, I don't know, continuous. Apparently dirty, not dirty and nasty, but illegal kind of things can happen, like 0 point energy. And we won't go there deeply, but let me just belay you of this reality that, a nothingness is not a vacuum. A vacuum is not nothingness, okay? A vacuum has dimension. It takes up space, okay? And even though there is no matter inside the vacuum, it has been proven that there is this 0 point energy in a vacuum. In fact, this very well could be the dark energy causing the increased rate of expansion of our universe. But what happened, and this happens at the Planck time, so in very short periods of time, you have spontaneously just particles and antiparticles spontaneously generating, into reality, coming around and going back and poof, and hitting each other and going back out of reality. And apparently if they do it within this short period of time, they can get energy from nowhere, because they give it back.